We got some people joining.
Excellent.
Oh, nice. I forgot that we can't see them. Hello, participants.
Welcome in.
So I'm gonna.
No one's here yet. Hey, Kelly. Kelly, you're here twice, which feels appropriate.
Oh, didn't mean to do that.
Give away your content there.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Roger that, Kelly. I'm just going to think of it as U times 2 for the next 45 minutes, which feels good. We'll say this a couple times, team, but reminder to toggle chats to us, panelists, or chats to everybody, but mostly put your questions in the Q&A so that other folks can vote on them, and then we'll start answering those questions first when appropriate.
Yeah, and it's always fun to get to know everyone who's joining us. So if you have a minute to throw your name, your role, what you like about research in the chat, good way to kill some time while we give everyone a few minutes.
Could vote on who at UI has the coolest background. Clearly, Hope and Tucker are crushing the plant game. Well, the JH, I know
you can't beat a giraffe.
Oh, Carol's got some plants too. Showing them off. My family once ran into Vanna White at the Del Coronado in San Diego. Carol, you reminded me of.
Nice, we got a good crowd here today. It's exciting. Do a few more minutes, huh?
Yes. While we're talking about plants here, I only water the cactus once a month, and it's the 25th. So actually, today's the day I get to water the cactus today.
The 25th was yesterday, so this is awkward.
Well, I didn't do it yesterday, so
today it is. Great.
I'll send you all an update after this webinar. Successful cactus watering. I'm typically pretty impressed that randomly I'll just remember oh, it's the 25th. Today's the cactus day.
How did you pick the 25th?
I think that's when I bought it, and I water once a month, and I watered it. And then,
there you go.
Yeah.
Started the trend.
I celebrate the cactus's monthly anniversary joining my life.
Peloton chat. Cool. I know we're a little early, but you want to just do some intros while we're getting cooking here? It seems like we got kind of a critical mass forming.
You don't want me to continue talking about my cactus, JH? Is that?
I think I'm good on cactus.
Because I could keep going probably for 5 more minutes. Welcome everybody to Product Talk V3. I'm Tucker. I am our VP of Revenue here at User Interviews. A pleasure to be here today. Thanks all of you for being here today. Passing it over to my Rev colleague, Hope.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Hope Supernick. I am the Director of Customer Success. So hopefully I've had touch points with many of you as I'm seeing your names roll in. If you have not met me, I am a great resource if you have any questions or need product training, and we'll always be here to give you walkthroughs and updates on the great things that JH and Carol are working on.
Hi, yeah, and I'm John Henry, or JH, head up the product team here at User Interviews. So I'm going to take you through some of the initial content, and then going to turn it over to Carol, who is the director of our product team. It seems like Carol's stuck on mute. Hang on.
I'll put another plug in, team, while Carol's navigating Zoom. Please put questions, which we're very excited to answer. And by we, I mean JH and Carol. Put those in the Q&A feature and not the chat, so that everybody can see those questions. Hope and I will be monitoring those questions, and we will help JH and Carol answer them as they come.
Great. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think you're good.
Excellent. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Guest, Director of Product at User Interviews, and excited to share some of what we've been working on.
All right, should we just get rolling here?
Let's do it.
All right. So one thing we wanted to do quickly is a little bit of a new wrinkle for this audience. We figured user researchers are pretty geeked out in the world of product development and interested in how you try to build the right thing for users that they're going to be happy with. So we thought we'd pull back the curtain a little bit and show how we approach things at user interviews. We realized that context would hopefully also let us tell the story of what we've been working on and the impact it's having in a little bit more of a cohesive way, and make it easier for everyone to follow along. So we're going to share some of the outcomes that we are rallied around and kind of how we organize the team and some of that stuff. Obviously, as this graphic is kind of speaking to, product development can be a little messy, so we're not going to get into all of the nooks and crannies. We'll keep it kind of high level and give everyone some context on where we focus and how we organize and what we've been up to. So with that said, we are a very outcome-focused team. So I'll share the 3 outcomes that we're focused on at the moment. And I'll get into the reason for that later, but just to hit on those at a high level, the first one, and really a pillar of our business, is what we consider matching. And so basically, if you think about how our business was founded and what we really have built around, is the insight and the understanding that it's very painful for a lot of researchers to find the right people to talk to give them good feedback on what they need and what they're working on. And so we think of this as being able to quickly find the right participants for every project. And we think about it from a speed perspective because we believe that that is like a really good signal that the system's working effectively. So in order to find participants quickly, it means we need to have a large, diverse, engaged audience of participants that we can go to. It means we need to have a lot of data on them and an efficient way of targeting and assessing who's a good fit for things. And so we like that as an outcome. And so we have a team that is specifically focused on that. It's something that we are, we've always been focused on, and it will continue to be a focus of us. For us, it's really a pillar of our business. So that's a pretty obvious one, hopefully, but a big focus for us. The second one is what we call logistics. And this is basically, hey, you have participants, like what now? And we really like this one because when we talk to researchers and we try to understand like, hey, why don't you do, as much research as you'd like to? The common response is that it is perceived as being very time consuming or tedious. And we think this is kind of where a lot of that stuff happens in terms of reviewing people, deciding who you want to move forward with. How do you get them scheduled? How do you send a reminder? How do you follow up with an incentive after the fact? How do you track it? And so we think of this as a pretty broad bucket. And we really look at this as kind of like a funnel. So like people showed up, they were qualified and met your criteria. How well can they progress through the rest of it, both from the researcher's experience and the participant experience? And so, yeah, there's a lot here. And we'll talk in some upcoming slides about like how we narrow this down and we focus kind of, quarter to quarter to make this problem a little bit more approachable. But this is like a holistic area that we're definitely very focused on as a business. And then the third one is Hub, which is really just all about creating the best solution for conducting research with your existing user base. And so we know that for certain research projects, the only people who can give you the best feedback are the people who are using your product currently and have really felt that use case and are maybe familiar with the current version of it. And you want to show them some new iterations and they can compare and contrast it. And they're going to be able to give you that type of feedback. And so this is another one that's pretty broad. It runs the gamut of needs from like the governance, compliance, privacy side of things in terms of making sure you're doing right by your users, getting their consent, keeping their data secure and managing it in ways that are meeting all the laws. But it also is, things like customizing the experience and making sure that your users are going through something that represents your brand and is a delightful experience for them as well. And so this is something that we're tracking really from an adoption and usage perspective. And so we look at it as active Hub users. So how many researchers are engaging with the solution and getting value from it. So those are the 3 kind of like high level areas of how we organize the team. And we have a team for each. We call those teams pods. I'll get into more on that in a bit. We've kind of always been pretty outcome focused throughout the life of the product team. But as we've grown and scaled the team really this year, as we raised money at the beginning of the year, this has been a more deliberate focus for us. And we've had the resources and been able to hire people to kind of put the structure in place more formally. And so this is something that we really transitioned to during Q2 and Q3. As you can imagine, it's a little bit of a hectic transition at times. So I wanted to give a lot of kudos to the team for just managing it pretty gracefully. It's one of those things where you have in-flight projects, you need to hire, you're moving people from, one area of the business or the team to another area is kind of like an internal transfer. It's a lot to kind of line up and keep things moving. And obviously we want to continue to deliver good work while we're doing this. It's not like you drop everything and reorganize. And so just wanted to acknowledge that this has been something that as an internal focus was and really important to us. And just to zoom out a little bit in terms of why we are, a big believer in the outcome methodology, is basically we think it's a way to embrace the uncertainty and unknowns that come with building products. I'm sure everyone in this audience has felt that before. You think you have a great idea, you go out, you put it in front of people, it turns out to be a little bit of a flop or you miss the mark in some way. So when you get into like the feature side of things or the output side of things, which are common in product development as well, sometimes you're communicating a false certainty around, hey, we're going to do this and then we're going to do this. And you don't actually know if some of those things are going to work or get traction, and you might need to spend more time on them. Whereas outcome focused allows us to be a little bit more consistent as we deal with uncertainty and respond to change. So we know that this outcome is important. How we get there or the investments we make to achieve it might need to adjust as we learn new information. And then with that, it also just kind of creates a nice way of being accountable and focused. So again, I'm sure people have found themselves in this situation before, but there's just always more you can do in product than you have time to do. And so what's nice with the outcome framework is it allows us to really easily say, hey, that's a great idea. Is it aligned with one of our current outcomes? And if it's not, then it's a lot easier to say not now, we'll revisit it later. And if it is, then we can consider it and figure out if it's actually a more impactful idea than some of our other ones and if we should make some trade-offs and adjust plans accordingly. And then why these outcomes? Why matching, why logistics, why hub? Just to touch on that really quickly. We're trying to put a couple factors together. One is user needs. And so we obviously, at user interviews, try to keep users very front and center in what we do. And so, as I said on the previous slide, we know people need help finding participants, and we really think of that as matching. Like that's a matching problem. We need a healthy audience of participants. We need to be able to contact them, and we need to be able to get them to the right researchers and the right opportunities. So that one's a pretty obvious user need. We know that research can be perceived as painful, tedious, time-consuming, et cetera. And so making that process easier to manage and more delightful and faster and efficient is a really big goal for us, and I think really well aligned with what users ask from us, and that's logistics. And then again, hub is one where we just hear that from a lot of people that our current way of recruiting our own users is kind of a mess. People have different spreadsheets. We have data everywhere. We're using all these different tools. And so we know that's a problem that has not been well addressed for a lot of teams, and we're excited to help try to solve that. The other piece, of course, is like our business goals. We are growing really rapidly as a team. We'd like to continue to do that. And so we want to have outcomes that are aligned with the user needs, but also we believe are going to lead us to be successful. And so I think matching is like strengthening our core value prop, which is very aligned with that. Logistics is going to make it possible to do more research because it's easier to do research, which is, again, kind of a win-win for both sides. And then hub, we think, is just a really strategic and important area for us to be a player long-term. And so we want to make sure that we have a great solution there. And then the last piece, which is very internal focused, is we want to organize these outcomes in areas that don't overlap too much so that the team owning it can work with a lot of autonomy and be able to move quickly to achieve their outcomes and drive impact. And so if you have a lot of stuff that's too overlapped, then you have people who are technical. On the technical side, you're getting into merge conflicts. On the PM side, you're having to juggle who's prioritizing what or who's taking it. And so we do try to find things that are relatively distinct so that the teams have space to own their area and run with it and allow us to scale. Obviously, in real life, this is a lot messier. We don't have these nice things. It's much more blobby and all over the place. But we're excited about the way we've set this up, and we think it solves this kind of balancing act pretty well. What is a pod? So I couldn't resist a lame dad joke, so I apologize for that. It is a group of dolphins, but in our world, it's a cross-functional team that's responsible for identifying, validating, and delivering solutions to meet user needs. And again, within the outcome that they own. So we have one pod per outcome. And Carol will take you through this in terms of what the different pods have been up to and how they're driving impact. And again, this is one of those things where it allows us to give the pods a lot of autonomy because we know if they're staying in their area and driving things that are relevant to what they're focused on and what they own. In terms of who makes up that team in user interviews, we really think of it as the classic trio. So a product manager, product designer, a tech lead, so representing all of the major functions, and then a handful of software engineers that support them in terms of actually, getting that work out the door and shipping it to users. We have, research who plays in this as a support as well. We have obviously close ties to analytics, customer support, lots of other people. So it's even more cross-functional than this. But when we say pod in our parlance, this is really the core group there. Cool. Uh-oh. What did I do? All right. And then the last piece, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Carol, is we try to have everyone, again, not surprising, work in a very user-focused, research-driven, iterative way. The framework we found that works best for us on that front is, oh boy, I really zoomed in or something. There we go. is from Teresa Torres, Continuous Discovery Habits. Cool book, worth checking out if you haven't. We've actually tried our hand at a couple different versions of process things over the years, and this is the one that's kind of stuck for us best. And if you're not familiar with it, what's cool about it is it kind of works off of this framework that cascades, where you have an outcome. There's a bunch of different opportunities, which are like areas where we could intervene and help users to achieve that outcome and create positive results. Then there's a bunch of solutions, and then you run experiments and do other things to validate those solutions. And so what's nice about this is your confidence kind of cascades down it. So we're usually pretty confident that the outcome is relevant to users and good for our business. We have a lot of signal, and we feel good that that's a relevant outcome for us. And then as you move down, you kind of get a little bit less certain. So we're pretty sure these are good opportunities and places where we could be impactful, but we don't always know that with 100% certainty. And then even less so at the solution level. Like, we believe in this opportunity, but there might be 5 or 6 different ways we could go about solving it, and we're not sure yet which is the best way to do it, which is why, again, we try to avoid committing to specific features, but instead say, we're going to solve this problem, and this is an opportunity we're going to focus on, and we're going to really iterate and explore which of these things does that best, and partner with our users on figuring that out. So that is it for me and my spiel. I'll turn it over to Carol, but I do have one last plug while I have everyone here, since we have an audience that is very product development minded. Our team is growing. You probably all know great product managers and designers and engineers. So if you, in all seriousness, if you do know somebody, please send me a note, and I'll work with Tucker, who's on the revenue side, to figure out what kind of discount or deal or something we can get you as a thank you if we find a great person. Isn't that right, Tucker? All right, cool. Carol, take it away.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, great. So what I wanted to do was take you through each of the pods that JH mentioned and talk about, for each of them, what have we been working on recently, so in the last quarter since we last met, and then what's upcoming. And my hope also is in sharing what's upcoming. If you hear of things that are very relevant to your team or particularly interested in, definitely reach out. We are always love talking to researchers, so always looking to hear more about how we can best help you. So let's start with matching. Matching, as JH mentioned, is all about finding the right participants for every research project. And one of the things, let me make sure I can progress us. There we go. So sort of the first thing we have to do when we're thinking about matching is make sure we have a good understanding of what you, the researcher, is looking for in a given study. And there are 2 main tools that we use to do that today. One is characteristics. So that might be understanding the demographic traits, location, occupation for professional studies for a study. And then the other is through doing screener surveys. And so we've made a few improvements to both of those recently, just to make them, mostly make them easier to use, that are available today. So the first is on the screener side. Just under half of the screeners that we see use some type of logic. So they might, based on your first question, direct a user to one follow-up set of questions or a different set based on, based on some logic in the screener. And we think that the logic is very helpful, both for making it more efficient for you in getting data, and also more efficient for the participants in getting to the questions that are relevant to them. But one of the pieces of feedback that we heard a lot was that it can be difficult to get the logic right. And so what we launched earlier this year was the ability to preview the screener just as if you're a participant. So you can go through the screener, and if you answer the question in one way, follow a different path in another way. So definitely encourage you all to check out both, using skip logic in your screeners, and then also make sure to preview them, which should now reduce some of the errors. So what we saw as a result is a pretty significant decrease in having to sort of re-edit and fix screeners after launch. So about a 25% decrease since we launched this preview. So definitely check that out. And then the other edit is really a smaller one, but on the characteristics page, this is where you set what sort of demographics might be most relevant to you. We noticed researchers taking additional steps in how they select characteristics. So we just made a few usability improvements that are already live today, so that it's easier to select characteristics and then just see which characteristics you've selected, so you can make sure you're looking for the right participants. So those are the changes on the researcher side. A lot of the work on matching, as you can imagine, also happens behind the scenes on the participant side. So the first thing is really making sure that we have the right participants and that we have the data on the participants to be able to get them into projects. So a few changes that we've made there. One is, you can see here in this image, we've launched a new onboarding flow for participants. and with a few goals in mind. One is to get more participants actually through the onboarding flow, and the other is to get more valuable data on each one. And as a part of that, we've structured our job titles in a different way, so that now if you're doing professional studies looking for someone with a specific occupation, we're able to sort of more systematically search based on job title, because they're all fitting sort of like an industry standard list and hierarchy. So some of the improvements that we've seen there, we've seen actually a 50% lift in our ability to quickly, so within 24 hours, find professional participants for a candidate or for a project, largely from some of these changes that we made where we're collecting more and better data on participants.
Just quickly on that, because I know professional tester is kind of a loaded word in the user research space. So I'm just realizing that this could be confusing. So I think you spoke to this well, but like when we say professional, we mean like you're targeting them because they have a specific occupation, not because they take tons of research studies. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Very good point. Great. So the next step, once we have a clear sense of what the researcher needs and we have the participants that we need behind the scenes, actually engaging participants in the study is a critical part of matching as well. And there are sort of two main ways that participants get into studies today. One is they might go to our website and browse for projects, and we've launched a new browse page, which you can see here, updating some of the filters, some of the readability, just some of the speed, so that participants can very quickly find studies that are relevant to them. And we expect to continue to iterate in this area as well. And then the other thing is more behind the scenes, but a large number of our participants come in through proactive notifications. So as soon as a study is launched, we tell them that there's a study that's relevant to them. And behind the scenes, we launched a new technology to send much faster notifications and more targeted, so that we're at the place now where about 75% of studies, we get the number of requested participants in 24 hours. So we're very quickly able to fill a study soon. So just next steps in this area, mostly the work in this area will be a little bit behind the scenes on the participant side. As you can imagine, it's somewhat of an optimization problem, making sure we have the right participants and then we effectively match them. But we do expect that some of the changes we're making on occupational targeting will also surface to researchers, so you can better tell us what types of candidates you're looking for, especially when you're looking for people based on their work. So that is matching. The next area to look into is logistics. So once you have the participants in a project, how do you actually make sure that the process of reviewing, selecting, interviewing them, paying them incentives is all as seamless as possible? So a few changes to share in logistics, and then a lot of upcoming work as well. So one of the small sets of recent changes that we've been working on is helping participants show up. So once you actually have selected a set of participants, we want to make sure that, and you've sort of gone through the process of doing outreach and scheduling them, we want to make sure that they show up. And our no-show rates are actually, they're fairly low, but we think there's more we can do there, especially because it is at that point you have this participant in hand that you really want to talk to. So it's disappointing when they don't show up. So some of the changes we've made are similar to what you have on the researcher side. Participants can now add sessions to their calendars and they can sync their calendars so that the study is very clear and they'll never miss a study because they didn't know about it or they forgot about it. So then they'll get all the types of reminders and other features that come naturally by having something on your own calendar. Now, most of the work here, as you can imagine, is on the researcher side. So I wanted to share a little bit of how we've started to tackle this area, and then there's, we think, a large opportunity ahead of us to make this better. So the main area we've been focusing on the researcher side is making it easier to review and select participants. And what we've done so far is we hear a lot of cases where researchers might have designed sort of the ideal screener and the ideal set of characteristics that they're looking to target, but in reality, they're willing to go a little bit broader. So you could see here, a researcher told us recently, I often want to expand the pool beyond best fit candidates. And one thing that we thought might help there is we previously displayed only if a researcher was qualified or unqualified. And what we've since then done is made it easier to see, we introduced this thing called a match score. So you can see exactly how good of a match they are. So you could see, if they're 95%, it might mean that they're 100% on characteristics, but less strong on the screener. And then you could choose if you actually want to dig deeper. So that's the first version that we've already launched. And then this image here is a future iteration where we further break out alignment on characteristics versus screeners so that you could decide, maybe the demographics are really critical, but some screener questions, you actually want to have a diversity of candidates. You want to have people who use iPhones and Androids, for example. So we hope that this feature makes it easier to sort of quickly scan and then make decisions about which candidates to look into further. So that's what we've launched so far. As I said, there's a lot upcoming in this space. So one of the things that's most immediately on the horizon is making it easier to filter from a broad set of candidates. So a case that we often hear is that a researcher maybe wants to find candidates who meet they want to talk to a diversity of participants. So maybe they want different technology users, different demographics. And what they find is they're taking the list of participants, they're exporting it, they're sort of filtering by a set of characteristics, they're coming back into user interviews to then invite and approve those candidates. And it's really sort of a long back and forth process. So we would love to address this problem. So our very first step is making it easy to filter by both demographic characteristics and screener questions. So in this case, this visual you can see here, the user is both filtering by by gender and then also by a question that came up in the screener. So they could say, maybe what they really need is they want to talk to equal men, women, non-binary for people who answered a question a specific way. And this should make it much easier for them to do so directly in the map. So then, so that's upcoming. And then this is just, as I mentioned, it's sort of a large opportunity area. And so what I wanted to do was share with this team, this group, how we're thinking about the broad opportunity space and then sort of get some feedback on which of these areas is most relevant or sort of meaningful or maybe acute for your team. So this is an opportunity map similar to what JH mentioned earlier. And you can see that the broad theme that we're focusing on is reviewing and selecting participants. But within that, through our research, we hear several themes that come up a lot. So we hear a theme around, I need good participants. And this theme is often the types of things that come up is maybe you have a good sample of participants, but you want to, again, get a broader diversity, demographic, or different answers to screener questions. So you need to reach out again to get more participants. Or maybe you have a set from your existing pool that you've talked to in the past that you want to re-engage. So we think there's a lot we can do there to help add more participants to a study once it's already going. The next area is sorting through the participant pool. So this is the area that we have been focused on, and those solutions I shared above are addressing this area. But I think there's a lot here. So this includes some of the challenges of, I want to sort and filter candidates. I need to quickly review a lot of candidates. I want to compare and contrast candidates. Lots of different sort of actions that we think people want to take to understand which participants are going to be the best fit for them. Then the next area is about confirming fit. So once you have a set of participants that you think is pretty good, we know that researchers will do additional work, whether it's additional screening, like getting on the phone with the customer, potentially reviewing their LinkedIn profile if it's a professional candidate, but taking a number of steps to just make sure this actually is the candidate that you want to talk to. And we want to make that a fast and efficient process and surface the data that you need to do that. And then the final step is actually approving the applicants. So sort of most directly, just quickly going through and being able to sort of get people scheduled for projects. But then also we do hear a lot of cases where you need to maybe balance across your pool. And so different ways that you might need to, or like you need to prioritize, you need to mark your best fit and prioritize them and then approve from the top down. So a lot we think we could do there to make that cleaner. So again, there's a lot in this space. I wanted to share it, both to share sort of the current focus, which is on really sorting the pool, but then also to share how we're thinking about the types of feedback that comes up a lot that we'd love to be able to address. And I did want to get input from this group. So I think the best thing is probably just share it in the chat if you'd be willing, on if one of these areas, one of these four that I mentioned, so good participants, sorting the pool, confirming fit, approving applicants, if one of those feels most sort of acute or relevant for your team, we'd love to hear it so we can think about what to prioritize next. I'll give you I'll give you 10 seconds to write something in the chat.
We call those awkward silences here, Carol.
That's true. Our names, our namesake.
Love a good Zoom awkward silence.
For those of you who don't know, JH is co-host of our very own podcast titled Awkward Silences.
All right, I'll let you think about that. The last area I wanted to walk through was Hub. As JH mentioned, Hub is all about finding the best solution for conducting research with your own user base. And before I share some of what we've been working on and what's next, I did just want to highlight that we see two very common use cases for how teams use Hub. One of them is sort of more similar to an interview project workflow where they might go into their internal database and look for customers based on maybe some of their behaviors, like they used a feature recently or they're just very active users. And then they take them through our sort of recruiting process of screener, schedule, incentive payment, et cetera. And then another very common case that we hear is they want to use Hub as a way to have basically a beta feedback group. So a group of users who's highly engaged, who's willing to provide feedback frequently. And we hear a lot of success with this group as well. And so I wanted to share that because the next set of features the immediate next feature you're gonna hear is largely about helping our researchers create a beta feedback group. So specifically, what have we been up to? One of the most common ways that people will add users to Hub for these feedback groups is through an opt-in form. And the opt-in form is basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with it or familiar with Hub, it's a standalone page where you can have people sort of apply to be a part of your panel. And it allows you to collect contact information, demographic information, as well as get their data consent, as well as fill out sort of screener questions within the form. And people share it in a variety of ways. Researchers will, for example, I was talking to someone recently who every support ticket that came in, they gave them the option to join the panel. So a really nice, like passive way to build your set of users. And what we've done recently on this is just added some more customization to opt-in forms, making it easy to add and remove fields, to add required or not required screener questions, to update the way the data consent form works so that the experience that a user gets if they're first coming into user interviews through an opt-in is how you'd want to represent your company. So that's one of the things we've been up to. And the other is we regularly hear for researchers that are using Hub that they might want to update their population through an API. So this typically manifests as maybe I want to add new participants via an API, or I want to update their information so I know they recently used a feature via the API. And we wanted to take a first step in this area, specifically by addressing requests around deleting participants, largely for GDPR. So if you had a participant in Hub, but they asked to be requested from your database, your home database, you could just then through an API delete them from Hub and have that happen automatically. So this is just an alpha version of the product that we launched, but if you're a Hub user and it's interesting to your team, definitely reach out to Tucker and Hope and we can talk about how to get you set up.
Yeah, one just quick thing on this that has been really cool as we've been talking to more and more Hub teams is people do find really clever use cases for this. Like, so as Carol mentioned, putting it in support, email footers or whatever, just to get people to sign up passively. But also we've heard of some teams using it as like an internal form. So, because anyone can submit it, right? So it doesn't have to be the end user. And so having your customer support team, when they talk to somebody and they're like, oh, Tucker should really talk to this person, putting their email address in the opt-in form, maybe filling out some pre-filled questions about like the type of feedback they're going to be useful for. And now they're in there. So when Tucker, is doing his next research project, he can just go filter and find that person already. So there's lots of really cool ways people use this. And we see really good engagement for the teams that have adopted it. So we're excited about this path.
Yeah, just to highlight one of the stats that users who come in through opt-in forms are often highly engaged and interested in providing feedback. So we get they're 5 times more likely to respond to an invite than someone that you might just upload from a CSV. So very cool tool in that way. So speaking of which, what the team is currently focusing on is helping invite and engage users to research. So common feedback we hear is that I might have my pool of participants in Hub, but actually going out and getting them to participate in studies can be difficult. So I was talking to a researcher yesterday, and this is a quote from her. inviting users to research is like fly fishing. You have to cast many times to get one bite. And we hope that we will make it easier over time. So some of the things that we're working on here are making it easier to write engaging and effective invite emails. So both customizing email content and then especially understanding how effective an email is if you're getting a high response rate or not from it, so that you can iterate and improve your engagement over time. So here you can see, this is just an early mock, but you can see an image of what it might look like to be able to better understand engagement in emails. And then I'd say similarly, another thing we're investigating is being able to follow up with people that you have invited just to sort of nudge them again to participate in your study.
Cool.
So as JH mentioned, Hub is definitely a major focus for our team. So if you are a Hub user and you have feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please reach out. We're actively doing interviews all the time on Hub, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I see somebody in the chat that we're probably going to follow up with. So Jamie, we'll be in contact.
Great. Great. So that's an overview of some of what we've built and what's upcoming from each of the pods. And I'll turn it back to JH for Q&A.
Yeah. So Tucker, I know some questions came in through Q&A. If you want to.
Yes. Unfortunately, you all can't see them, which we didn't realize, but we can see them and I'll read them out as we go. Number one is from Kelly. Her question is, where is quota management on the roadmap?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as we explore the filtering kind of opportunity and how you narrow down your set, there's a lot of different paths that's going to take. So I think we have high confidence that starting like with your participant list and being able to put some filters in there is high value and broadly applicable. But there's lots of different ways you could approach the quota problem. And so that's one where I think that'll be like a follow-on exploration to that work. So you can imagine that it's upstream. So as you're setting your screener or your characteristics, you can assign like this answer puts people in cohort 1 and this answer puts people in cohort 2 and kind of do it up front. You can imagine doing it kind of after the fact or doing it at the calendar stage where you're inviting some participants to calendar 1 and some participants to calendar 2 and you manage your quotas that way. So I think we hear the need very loud and clear, like that comes up often. And I think as we get comfortable with like this filtering approach and other possible paths here, we'll probably lean more into solving the quota problem more explicitly. But we're hoping that the filters will make it easier in a way to manage quotas in app while not being like the full solution to like truly handling quotas in a really intentional way. But it's very top of mind and the team's getting a lot of good feedback there as they do their discovery.
Next up from Jake, quote, I'm curious about limiting participants coming from the same or similar fields, example, software developers, IT managers, etc. So maybe similar to quota management, but specifically around.
Oh, okay, I see. So this is almost like we're doing research on an app and we'll talk to anyone except for software engineers or product managers and stuff like that. Is that kind of what that's saying? Is like those people are going to be too close to the problem, and so we want to make sure that it's almost like inverse occupation targeting. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. I know part of the reason we wanted to structure the occupation data is so that there's more things we can do with it in terms of like how it is used. And so right now, the majority of the request and the demand we see is I need this specific occupation or I need people who use this tool. But that's a really good piece of feedback and a use case that I think Carol and the matching team will be keeping top of mind. But I don't think we have an exact commitment on that. But thank you for sharing. That's super interesting.
Next up is from Sarah. It's a longer question, but I think a really interesting one. Any chance allowing companies to add a custom field and then populate it to recruit? So for example, her company has identified 5 core audience segments, but there are only 3 of those segments they want to target. It would be great for her to flag internally which participants or which segment. So like adding a custom flag, custom tag to participants within Recruit, and then referencing that tag in the future.
Yeah, that's a very interesting use case. I know, Carol, I think you were on a call with a researcher yesterday or today where like the idea of notes came up again, which is similar to tagging, a different flavor of it, right? I think our vision long term, just to zoom out a little bit, is we have this hub participants view, which kind of serves as a CRM where you can see everyone your team has run research with, when you last contacted them, all this stuff, append it with different information like custom fields and tags and other things. Longer term, we'd like to fold some of the recruit stuff into that same type of experience. So every participant we've ever found for you also lives in a repository that you can access, and you can tag those people. And then that way, if we've already found somebody great for you that you just want to go back to, it becomes much easier to do that. We have a very nascent version of that in the product currently, but it's something that needs a few iterations, I think, to really be at the level that would be truly useful for a lot of different use cases. So that's not something that we have an immediate idea in terms of when we might go down that path, but we've definitely heard it. And I think just the general idea of like note taking and tagging, as we look at like how do you review participants, I think it actually is pretty aligned with that opportunity space. So the PM in our team that's focusing there, I think we'll be exploring that, because in addition to like storing it for long-term purposes, there is just the immediate piece of within this project, this person is cohort 1, this person's cohort 2, and so that might be something that we can step into it that way. But I do want to avoid on these calls committing my team to specific builds. So I'm sorry if I'm sounding vague, but I want to just make sure that we're kind of understanding like where it fits in, but we don't have an exact timeline for something like that at the moment.
Yeah, Gage, that's my job, committing product to things. Next question. I have a question from Paul. Any plans to add engagement metrics for opt-in forms, or a way to differentiate participants who signed up via opt-in form 1 versus 2? That's
a very good question. I'm curious. I could throw it back to that person in the chat, maybe. Like, what are some of the engagement metrics that would be interesting to see there? That's not one we get a ton of requests on, but is very interesting. I don't know if you're able to give an example of metrics, but in terms of the source stuff, we actually do behind the scenes track how people come into populations. So whether they came in through this opt-in form or that opt-in form, or a CSV upload, or applied to a project. And so that's something we were actually talking about recently as we look for all the different hub opportunities to chase down. I think surfacing that information and making it something you can filter and sort on is certainly interesting. We had a researcher from a large team yesterday bring up a very similar concept. So again, not a specific idea on when we'll tackle that, but I think we're well positioned to do it, and we have a lot of the data behind the scenes. So it's just a matter of finding out how to solve that problem.
Next up is from Kelly again, all-star questioner. Any plans to expand options for inviting participants that were not used in a previous study? Currently, we can see qualified and completed, but oftentimes I see someone great that I can use for another study.
Yeah, this is it's an extension of what I was just saying, and I think it's a really interesting one for us. And I think the downside of when you start to organize these people into these cohesive areas is you have some stuff that kind of sits at the intersection, and then it makes it a little bit tricky for us to know who should take it. And I think as the team grows, we'll add additional outcomes and additional pods, and so it'll make it easier to have some more granularity. But if you think about reusing people we found in the past, it's kind of matching, and it's kind of logistics in our terminology, in the sense of it's about finding participants who could be a good fit for your upcoming study, but it's also about like, I already kind of know some stuff about this person, and so I want to be able to push them right into a session. We think there's a lot of opportunity there, and we think the current solution we have is pretty basic, and as I mentioned, could benefit from a couple iterative cycles. And so, yeah, I think that is top of mind for us. And I think it's one of those things where when we've already done the work and like found participants that you all like, and you just want to go back to them on a future study, like we should probably get out of the way and let that happen. And so that is something where I think it's very aligned with our interest and very aligned with user interest. We just it's probably not an immediate priority for this quarter, but it is something that I think will be explored more and more towards the end of the year.
Last question. Sorry, we don't have time to get to all of them all. This comes from Zach. What about confirming accepting participants without having to schedule them?
Confirming accepting. I might need a follow-up on that in the chat if we could quickly.
I'm guessing at JH, maybe this is accepting somebody without sending them to the scheduling flow. Like, can they be accepted and be waiting on some additional step for the researcher to take?
Yeah, I guess what I'm just trying to work through is like, you want to accept them and have them do some intermediary task, like an unmoderated thing and going through usability flow? Or is it more of like, you don't need to schedule them, you just need to like jump to the incentive payment because you've maybe already handled it offline and you want to just get them the gift certificate that was promised or something. So I guess I just, that's the part where I'm a little unclear, but I would love to hear more about that use case if we could get some extra detail, because it sounds like
Zach says exactly, but I'm not quite sure what he said exactly to. But Zach will follow.
One of the two things I said.
One of those two things is exactly correct. Everybody, we will save this Q&A. We'll respond to all the questions that have been asked. Thank you so much for taking the time to ask them. We love these venues for interacting with you all and getting your Q&A. JH, you do an awesome job of answering these questions rapid fire. Appreciate it. Any last thoughts from our amazing product duo here, JH and Carol?
I just want to say, like, thanks for coming to hang out with us. It's always, so flattering that people are interested in what we're up to and passionate about the product. And we really appreciate, spending time with us. And I think Carol would probably say the same, but I think we're just like really excited and optimistic about the team and how it's ramped up and like how we're really starting to get into rhythm. Maybe it sounds obvious, but a year ago we were a pretty small team, especially during COVID, really trying to bootstrap through some stuff as we were unsure of how things are going to play out. And now that we're a little bit more well resourced and we've really hired some great people, like I think we're going to start to see stuff really start to hit our stride, so to speak. And we're just super excited about the future and excited to get some new functionality in front of you all.
Last question, JH. What's the giraffe's name? Henry?
It's a good question. This was a gift from an uncle, as you can probably imagine, a large, obnoxious gift for a child. We read a book that's about Gerald the giraffe, so I guess we just call him Gerald mostly, since it's Giraffes Can't Dance. If you're looking for a good children's book, it's pretty solid.
Well, from all of us here at User Interviews, including Gerald, happy Thursday, researchers.
Thanks, everyone.
That's it.